The issue of tax administration is one that the Lagos State government and the LRS take very seriously. There are pertinent issues that surround tax administration that residents need to familiarize themselves with. Here on the Tax Talk, it is our duty to make sure that you get a firm grasp of all these issues and its interconnectivity with various aspects of our daily lives. My name is Oyedele Saleh and this is the Tax Talk. Setting us off on today's episode is business news. Stay with us.
This is business news. The President, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN, Mr. Samuel Agbeluyi, has noted that the new tax bill will make Nigeria's tax system better when passed into law. Agbeluyi, who noted this in Abuja during the 52nd induction ceremony of the institute, expressed confidence that the bill, which has already been passed by the House of Representatives, would also be passed by the Senate with minimum amendments. He noted that the bill is currently awaiting concurrent approval from the Senate, having been passed by the House of Representatives, amongst other things, and recommends the introduction of tax agents who will serve as intermediaries between taxpayers and revenue authorities. According to Agbeluyi, the institute has reviewed these bills and has made submissions on areas where specific provisions may benefit from further refinement to enhance tax administration and uphold the highest standards of professionalism within the taxation system in Nigeria. The CITN at the event inducted new members with a call on them to uphold integrity and professionalism. And that's it on Business News.
Calling on all tax professionals, policy makers, and business leaders to be a part of keynote sessions, expert panels, and transformative workshops designed to drive economic growth. The 27th Annual Tax Conference of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria is here. Date is 12th to 16th of May 2025. Venue is the Abuja Chambers for Commerce and Industry. We bring you 5 impactful days of insight, strategies, and solutions. Theme is Taxation for Development, Policies, Law, and Implementation. Discover groundbreaking ideas, engage in powerful discussions, and network with top professionals shaping the future of taxation. Mark your calendars. Together, we formulate. Together, we fabricate. Don't miss it.
Thank you for staying with us on the Tax Talk. The issue of tax reforms currently taking center stage in Nigeria is one that is unavoidable. You can barely go 24 hours before a related issue is brought up in the news or online these days. I don't know how much you've read up or investigated on these policies, but our job here on this show is to make sure you are fed the right information. To that extent, today we have a special guest who will help us understand what you need to know and how these reforms affect your business. Essentially, we will be talking about tax reforms in Nigeria and personal income. We are now stepping out of the studio for a little bit to talk to the Chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Taiwo Oyedele. It's an honor to meet you, sir, and quite frankly, I've been looking forward to this session with you.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you too.
Oh, same here. Sir, could you tell us what inefficiencies or redundancies the current tax structure seeks to eliminate in the case of the new tax reform bills? And what is the primary focus of these reforms?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start with the primary focus. And I think that's an important question because more often than not, people have an assumption that whenever you do a tax reform, you want to tax them more. So one thing I can say to everyone is that this reform is first and foremost about the Nigerian people. So it is people-centered. And that is why, for example, Mr. President said we shouldn't tax seed because we want people to be able to invest and make a lot of money. We want them to be very wealthy and then they can pay taxes. We also don't want to tax poverty because if people are poor and they can't meet their basic needs, they can't pay taxes to the government. We want to enable small businesses, large businesses, foreign investors, local investors. So the primary focus of the reforms is the people and it's about prosperity. Before we now talk about tax mobilization and all of that. But to the other part of your question around inefficiencies we're trying to address, a lot of the rules we have today to do with the tax system, we inherited from our colonial masters. And the world has moved on since then. So you have the stamp duty law, is a law of 1939. You have even the Income Tax Act is in the 60s. We've not done a lot of modification to it. The VAT law is 30 years. So we're trying to eliminate ambiguities in the system. We're trying to use technology more and more importantly, tax intelligence. Today, if you say to the LRS that you only earn 1 million naira a month, it will be hard for them to know. But we want to get to a point where the taxman will not be asking you how much you earn. The taxman will tell you how much you earn because we have the intelligence within the system. We also have multiplicity of taxes. There are just too many taxes. And if you have a long list of taxes, there's always that apathy. People get tired. They can't understand it. They don't know where it starts, where it stops. We are collecting license for TV, for radio, for bicycle, for even wheelbarrow. We're in 2025. We're bigger than that. We're better than that as a people. So we want to harmonize those taxes. We also want to harmonize the collection of revenues. At the federal level, you have over 60 agencies collecting taxes and levies. Even in Lagos State, for example, we want the LRS to be the sole agency collecting revenue. We disagree saying that property tax is not a tax. It's actually a tax. That's why it's called property tax. When you harmonize, what we've seen around the world is once you harmonize everything into one agency, then you improve efficiency.
The bill states that Nigerian residents must pay personal income tax on all global income. Now, how does the government plan to avoid double taxation for Nigerians earning abroad?
Yeah, good question. So Nigeria is one of the many countries in the world where if you are a resident in that country, you pay tax on your worldwide income. A country like the US, if you're a citizen, if you like, be resident, if you like, don't be resident, anywhere you go, if you go to the moon, you still pay tax in the US. So Nigeria is not as aggressive as that. So we only ask you to pay tax on your worldwide income if you're a resident in Nigeria. So if you relocate abroad, and once you cut your tie in terms of residency with Nigeria, you don't pay taxes in Nigeria, except of course, you have income like rental income and so on and so forth. So what we have designed in the tax reform bills is that if you are a resident in Nigeria and you're able to tax on your worldwide income, you report the income you earn abroad, and depending on the type of income, if it's to do with dividend, interest, royalty, you're exempted if you bring the money in because we need the FX. If it's not one of those income that is exempt, we'll then ask you whether you pay tax in the country where you earn the income. Let's say, for example, you are earning income from South Africa and you've paid tax on it. That tax you paid, you're given a credit in Nigeria under a unilateral tax credit scheme. So because you get a credit for the tax you pay abroad, it eliminates the potential for double taxation, but only to the extent that that tax you paid abroad does not exceed the tax you should pay in Nigeria. So to a very large extent, we've been very deliberate in ensuring that there's no multiplicity of taxes because we want to attract more people to come into Nigeria do business. In fact, we had a session recently, and there is a Nigerian who relocated to the UK. And they were mostly working from home. And this was a question I've been asked a couple of times, even while I was in the private sector. So the person said, if I'm here in the UK and I'm working from home for almost a month, why can't I just come to Nigeria and work from home from Nigeria? Because it doesn't make any difference because you're not going physically to the office. And then by the time you look at the rules in Nigeria, you're afraid to come. Because by coming to Nigeria to sit down somewhere in Lagos and do your work, somebody will say that not only are you going to pay tax, that your employer must come to Nigeria and pay tax. And that was very discouraging for many businesses. And that's why also we don't have a lot of our young people working within the global outsourcing processing system. So those issues are now being addressed in those tax reforms.
But how will the bill address the tax obligations for such individuals who actually live in Nigeria but are working with foreign companies?
Yeah, so if you live in Nigeria and you work with a foreign company, so we're going to say to you, you are residents in Nigeria because you're physically here. So which means all the income you earn from working with that foreign employer, plus you may have other side hustles and stuff that you're also doing while you're in Nigeria, all of that is liable to tax in Nigeria. On that, your foreign income that you earn, we're going to ask you whether you pay tax abroad, right? If you haven't paid tax abroad, you pay all the taxes in Nigeria. If you pay tax abroad, we're going to ask whether that country is right to be taxing you because you're not physically there. So if they are right by the rules, then you get a credit in Nigeria so that you don't pay double tax. But everybody needs to understand that the fact that you sit down in Nigeria and you work for a multinational remotely does not mean that you're exempted from tax. You should declare. You have a legal obligation to make that self-declaration and do so honestly and pay your taxes on time.
Well, I still have a few more questions to aim your way, sir. However, we need to go on a short break.
All right.
It's time now to take a short break. When we get back, more questions for Mr. Oyedele. Stay with us.
Have you had a hard time with taxes and understanding tax administration in Lagos State and the complex nature of Nigerian tax law? Do you know what agency or tier of government collects the various types of taxes? Have you ever found yourself asking any of these questions? Join us for your favorite program, The Tax Talk, your infotainment program.
Thanks for staying with us, and this is still the Tax Talk, and I have here with me the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, on Corporate Talk, and we have been looking at the ongoing tax reforms. Sir, well, we have a few more questions to ask you, and of course, we just need to dive right in before we round off this segment. Taxation of employment benefits have been updated. Will this not discourage employers from actually giving out perks to their employees?
It's actually to the contrary. So what we have currently before the reforms is that, so for example, I live in an accommodation that is provided by the government for the period I'm doing this work. And then I wanted to pay my benefits in kind on the accommodation, and I couldn't find the rateable value. So I had to estimate. And I think I even gave extra money to LRS. So I just estimated a high amount as the rateable value to calculate my personal income tax on the benefit in kind. It shouldn't be like that. It should be easy. I should just do one tap or two and see the information that I need. So that is not available today. So what we've done in that reform is to create a very clear process for how that is determined on one hand. And on the other hand, just imagine the work you do, right? You need to interview a lot of executives and they are in Ikoyi and VI. If your employer says, let's give you a house in Ikoyi to stay, right? And you want to tax you on the benefits, you know it will be a lot. Maybe
Yes.
to swallow your salary. So what we've done in those reforms is to put a cap. So while you are being taxed on that benefit, it mustn't exceed 20% of your income before that benefit. So we're also trying to take care of the employees themselves while ensuring that everybody pays their fair share to the government.
The bill requires that partnership incomes should be taxed at the individual level. How will tax authorities enforce this?
Yeah, partnership taxation is one area where I don't know why we haven't been very clear about it in Nigeria, because really, when you start talking about partnership, they're a level higher than sole proprietor. Before people come together to do partnership, they're mostly professionals, they're lawyers, they're accountants. They have the capacity to do financial statements and file returns. But we haven't been very clear in our legislation around taxation of partnership. In fact, one of the things we did in these reforms, you may be aware that the Companies and Allied Matters Act was reenacted a few years back, and it introduced now limited liability partnership and so on that we didn't used to have before. So we took the view in our committee that, the taxes of those partnerships in whatever form or shape must remain with the subnational. It should be revenue going to the state, not to the center. Okay. So that's one thing that I believe it's a good development. So, but when it comes to partnership, because a partner in a partnership, unless it's a limited liability partnership, a partner in a partnership is not a person in law. So the partnership is not recognized as a person.
I see.
And therefore, you have to look beyond that vehicle that they're using for their economic activities into the persons behind the partnership. And that's where you find the individual. So you and I are persons in law. A company is a person in law. A partnership is not. So the way it should work really is, let them use the partnership to aggregate their income, expenses, and profits. And then we just share it to the partners, and the partners will pay their taxes. If they have a formula for sharing revenue, we'll follow their formula. If they don't, we share their profits equally so that the tax authorities will not lose out as a result of that. So I think one of the things we've done now is to simplify that whole process so that partners know what they need to pay taxes on, who they need to pay taxes to, and when those taxes need to be paid. We need to prioritize the people in all our reforms and in all our policies. We also need to put the interests of the country first at all times. I'm of the view that if you find an alignment between national interest and your self-interest, then so be it. But if there's a disconnect between what benefits you as an individual and what is good for the country, you must allow the interests of the country to prevail. Otherwise, what you're doing is wickedness, and it's unfair.
I just got back from that wonderful interview with Taiwo Oyedele, and I'm sure you enjoyed every bit of it. Now, every week, we look at tax-funded projects on the show. Today is no exception. It's now time for Tax Did It.
I welcome you once again to the 18th installment of the Lagos State Town Hall meeting, titled Data Technology Driven Security, the Way Forward, and the presentation of security vehicles in the state.
We give much kudos to the Lagos State Security Trust Fund for what they have done for the police so far and the much they are doing today. Lagos is working. We all know that today Lagos State is the safest state in Nigeria.
And I've been waiting for the opportunity to come to Lagos to do same, because I know it's going to be different. Lagos State has once again demonstrated its reputation as center of excellence. The state had continued to set the pace for excellence in security and infrastructural development in Nigeria. I want to thank Mr. Governor. I thank the government of Lagos State. I thank the people of Lagos State. I am from Ogun State, but Lagos is my home.
And I stand here truly happy that we're implementing the security and governance component of our team's agenda. It's about an important component of that security and good governance, which is the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. And so this 18th edition birthed our consistent commitment to Lagosians and to everybody that has been part of this fund. But today, IG, right in front of you, for the police and other security architecture in Lagos, we'll be handing over a total of 260 vehicles with other security gadgets for them as a demonstration of our commitment as a government, as a demonstration of our commitment that we gave. And I want to thank the board and all our partners at the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. I want to say to them that your efforts at supporting the fund is not to waste. We'll continue to appreciate you, especially our supporters from the private sector. We'll continue to say to you that we are in this together. We're in the same coin. We're just two different sides of the coin.
My name is Oyedele Sale, and on behalf of the entire crew of the Tax Talk and the LRS, we say thank you for joining us and see you next time again.